So how's our new year starting? Well, maybe, just maybe, Geralt of Rivia hasn't hung up his silver sword just quite yet. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. As always, I am Jonathan, your host here at QuickBird Gaming, and I appreciate you tuning in for this year's first episode of QuickBird News, where we cover all the gaming news that's fit to cover. I hope everyone had a happy holiday and a safe new year. And now that we're into the new year, the news cycle, which was a little slow over the holidays, has started to pick up now as people are getting back to work and more things are coming out. So we have a few things to talk about now that we're into the new year. We have some news on good old games changing hands. And it's kind of interesting. We have bad news for PlayStation 5. This is not going to be a good situation. We have news on a couple of games that are upcoming, and a couple of games are getting ready to shutter their doors. But before we get to all that, we got to talk about our main story. As always, every story is time-stamped down in the description box, so feel free to jump down there, scan the stories that are available, pick out one you like, and jump to it. But now with the preliminaries out of the way, we need to talk about this persistent rumor that there's going to be some more DLC for The Witcher 3. And just myself, I really hope this is true. Okay, we're going to start with this IGN article from Thursday, January 2nd, and it says, The Witcher 3 secret expansion rumors swirl after CD Projekt hints at new content. Now, I want to preface everything that I'm about to say in this news segment that none of this is verified. It is all speculation, but there are some strong hints that something else is going to be coming. CD Projekt Red has been pretty insistent that we were not going to see Witcher 4 this year, that it wasn't going to be at least until 2027 and could be longer. It just depends, but they're pretty sure we won't see it this year. So that's where some of this information is coming from. And according to the article, it says that word that the studio was planning more content for its 2015 blockbuster originally dates back to a report published online last summer, in which Polish games industry insider Boris Nispilak, apologies for my pronunciation, first spilled details of the supposed project. At the time, he claimed the development was being handled by Fool's Theory, the studio that CDPR has also tasked with remaking The Witcher 1. Today, in a report by Eurogamer, Nispilak doubled down on his initial claim and pointed to a recent hint by CDPR that the new content was quietly in the works. And this comes from Chief Financial Officer Peter Nilobuskowitz. Again, I apologize. He said in the company's latest financial report, given our current progress, there's a chance that new content hinted recently may receive release this coming year. Without naming that content, he went on to suggest it could have an impact on the company's results, This isn't the only official mention of the unnamed project either. In a follow-up investor call following the aforementioned results, Joint Studio CEO Mikhail Nowakowski also made mention of another project that Fool's Theory was working on in the same breath as mentioning the Witcher 1 remake. And then finally you have this from Polish analyst Mateusz Krasnowski, who said he expected the next paid add-on of the DLC for Witcher 3 to be released in 2026, and by May of 2026. So the way I'm looking at this is there are some strong hints that something else is coming. Again, we don't know this for sure, but I really want to believe that this would be the case. And if I'm in CDPR's shoes, your next major property is going to be Witcher 4. I don't think we're anywhere near Cyberpunk 2 releasing. Your next major project, what a better way to rev up some interest than to drop a DLC and get people back into the Witcher universe maybe a year before you're going to release your next game. Seems like a really smart thing to do. So aside from, the hints, it also seems like a good timing issue. Now, having said that, this industry is chronically allergic to doing things smartly, so I don't know if we're going to see this, but I really hope it's true. If I didn't have such a backlog that I'm going through right now, and my gaming time has been pinched the last few months anyway, if I didn't have such an enormous backlog, I would be replaying Witcher 1, 2, and 3 this year, this spring. It was kind of on my to-do list, but I've got a lot of other stuff I want to get to. One of my favorite franchises, Witcher 3, might be the best RPG ever made. I think it's got a good argument. So getting people back into it would be a great plan. So I guess we will see what happens, and I will certainly be on the lookout for any news, and I'll be bringing it to you here as soon as I know about it. Okay, next up, we're going to look at this Games Radar article that was published on Tuesday, the 30th of December. And the headline reads, CD Projekt co-founder buys back good old games, promises The Witcher 4 and Cyberpunk 2 will still launch on the PC platform. And the article says, CD Projekt has sold its PC gaming storefront, Good Old Games, back to Michael Kaczynski. I assume that's how you say that. The original co-founder behind the digital store and the RPG developer. When he and others founded the Polish company in the 1990s, GOG didn't come about till 2008 with the mission statement of helping people buy and play older games. Okay. In its announcement blog, Good Old Games says the acquisition won't change much and the storefront will continue with business as usual. GOG promises they will remain DRM free. GOG Galaxy will remain optional. Its mission statement is staying intact. Making games live forever, will keep games playable over time, revive classics properly, and stick to gamer-friendly policies, the blog said. Finally, all the upcoming CD Projekt Red games will still launch on Good Old Games when the time comes, including Witcher 4 and Cyberpunk, since Good Old Games says it's apparently continuing close cooperation with CD Projekt. So, on the surface, this doesn't seem like this is going to amount to a whole lot for the gamer, a whole lot of difference. It should be relatively transparent. This change in leadership at Good Old Games. You know, if I'm going to put an asterisk on this, but I'm just going to say that I don't think this is going to amount to very much for us at all. Now, the asterisk being that we get told a lot of things as gamers, as consumers, as citizens of this world by our corporations and our leadership and our politicians and so on. We get told a lot of things that end up not being the case. And I'm going to say that this is just something, if you use Good Old Games, if you use the platform, just keep this in the back of your mind. Be alert and be aware that things could possibly change in the future. It doesn't look like anything has changed yet. There have been no massive immediate changes, but just bear it in mind. Keep it in the back of your brain and just kind of be informed. I mean, we will see how this develops. Okay, sticking with related news, we'll turn to this article from Dual Shockers that was published on Saturday, the 3rd of January. The Blood of Dawnwalker main theme revealed in a new trailer. And the article says 2026 will see many highly anticipated video games later this year, from Grand Theft Auto to indie games such as Big Walk. Okay. To coincide with the rise of the Wolf Moon, the first full moon and supermoon of 2026, on Saturday, January 3rd, Rebel Wolves released a launch year special video to kick off Dawnwalker's launch year. They recapped Dawnwalker's announcements, reveals. The majority of the video focused on new revelations for the upcoming game, including the debut of Dawnwalker's official main theme. And they linked the video, which I will also link down below in the description box. You can go check out the main theme. It's not bad. I'm not sure it's the best video game theme I've heard, but it's original. You know, if you want to build hype, putting your OST out before the game is a good way to do it. Now, I don't believe there is any official release date for this. The Rebel Wolves guys have said that it is coming out this year in 2026. However, with GTA kind of shadowing the end of the year, it's due to release in November. I can't imagine they're going to release it relatively close to GTA 6. So if we don't get a release date, by about, say, September, I expect the game to be pushed off to next year. And that's okay. I'm okay with that, because from what I've seen with it, it looks really interesting. This day-night cycle of this half vampire main character you're going to play in the game. I think it looks like an interesting game, and I'd rather them cook it a little longer and get it right than rush it and screw it up. Now, I have decent amount of faith in these guys because the head of Rebel Wolves, Konrad Tomeskovich, I think is his last name, he was the game director for Witcher 3. So he's got experience with big budget RPG type of games, big scope type of games. And I think a lot of the people at Rebel Wolves are expatriate CDPR developers. So they've got a pedigree, and this game looks interesting. But go check out the original soundtrack. Like I said, the link's in the description box, and get hyped for a new vampire RPG game, because it's got to be better than Bloodlines 2. Well, I don't know how important this actually is, because I don't play on a console, like I've said, but I thought this was a big enough story, given the amount of people talking about it, that I would cover it. And this is coming to us from the Gaming Bible on Thursday, January 2nd. PS5 hardware leak just made console jailbreaking incredibly easy. And basically, I'm not going to get into all the technical details of this because, frankly, I don't think I understand them all. But essentially from what I understand happened, people out there have determined and demonstrated a method in which to get the boot ROM sequence off of the motherboard, the chips, basically the processors of the PS5s, the thing that's kind of physically encoded into it that can't be fixed with like a firmware update. And that is kind of opening the door to the PS5 being jailbroken. And from what I understand, that means it is going to make it, theoretically, more feasible to run pirated software, to get around some of the hardware limitations, and start to be more exploitative, and basically do a lot of things that would just void your warranty with the machine. And it seems like this is going to be a developing story that not a lot has come out yet. I haven't heard or seen of anybody posting that they got their PS5 to sit up and bark and really outperform the native settings. I haven't seen anybody posting yet that they've been able to play pirated games and avoid, you've been able to work around the PS5 online requirement. And doing so, we haven't seen any of that yet. But from what this article says, and it links to a Tom's Hardware article that gets more into the nitty gritty, like the technical details. It says this made as a significant step forward in people jailbreaking their PS5s. So this is definitely a stay tuned issue. For the hackers, they got an extra Christmas present this year. Does it pay to be an aggressive player? Maybe sometimes, but according to this PC Games In article published on Saturday, the 3rd of January, not in Arc Raiders, where Embark CEO confirms that Arc Raiders matchmaking takes your aggression into account, so behave yourself out there. They said there's been much discussion about player behavior since the smash hit Extraction Shooter and one of 2025's best multiplayer games first exploded. Among that comes the question of whether the Arc Raiders matchmaking system accounts for your tendency to turn on fellow players, and now we have official confirmation directly from Embark CEO Patrick Soderlund himself. He said, speaking to Dean Takahashi of GamesBeat, Soderlund reveals that such a system does in fact exist, though he notes it's actually a very recent addition. Describing the matchmaking broadly, he said obviously first it's skill-based, then you have solos, duos, and trios. And then also, since a week or so ago, we introduced a system whether we matchmake based on how prone you are to PvP or PvE. So basically, if you're somebody who goes around randomly shooting people, you're going to end up in a game you're more likely to end up in a game where other people are doing the same thing. And, that seems to make sense. I don't think this entirely removes the PvP threat. I think it's always a potential, even if somebody may be a occasional PvPer and you just might get the bad draw when they shoot you when your back's turned. But it does seem to reduce the possibility, and I think this is a great way to lower the risk for people who aren't as interested in that. Whatever Arc Raiders is doing, it seems to be doing it right. This game is still killing it with the player numbers. If I flip over here to SteamDB and look at this, and this is as of today, on the 3rd of January, as I record this, you can see that this game's still hitting 439,000 players. That's only 40,000 players off their peak from several months ago when they started. And I mean, if you look at the whole year, since it's been out for several months, they haven't dropped off at all. Now, they may drop off after the holidays. A lot of games might, but still, this game is doing something right. The people who like this type of genre are really flocking to it. It's retaining like 80-90% of its players from launch, which most games don't do, which most multiplayer battle royale, well, it's not a battle royale, kind of, but I don't want to split hairs. Most multiplayer team shooters don't retain players. Battlefield 6 has lost about 2/3 of its players. I don't see anybody talking positively about COD, Black Ops 7. Everybody's bitching about that. But everybody who's in this genre seems to like Arc Raiders, or at least the vast majority of people do. So if they're going to do this, they're doing something right. And if they keep doing things right, they're going to keep winning. $40 price tag versus $70 for the other games doesn't hurt at all. Okay, next up, I want to talk about the upcoming game from IO Interactive, 007 First Light. And I got a couple of articles on that. We'll start with this Video Games Chronicle article. This was published back on the 24th of December, but because I wasn't covering the news, I thought I'd just touch on it now. and it said that the game has been delayed by 2 months. It was originally due to release on March 27th. It's now going to be May 27th when it releases. So apparently they didn't feel it was quite ready, and I don't think that 2-month delay is going to hurt too much. The next thing, though, that has happened is I'm referencing this FRVR article, which was from Tuesday, the 29th of December. It says, IO Interactive says old school Bond would be tone deaf today as 007 First Light moves the character toward more modern values. Now, there's not a great deal of exact clarity given in this article about what that means, but a lot of people have been supposing it means he's not going to be as much of a womanizer now, and so on and so forth. And basically, that's turned into a shit show online where you've got the one camp that's saying, good, we don't want this. The other camp that's saying it's not going to be Bond without this, and you're stupid for doing this. And this side's calling everybody who wants this woke, and this side is calling everybody who wants this Cro-Magnons or misogynist, whatever else. Me, I look at this and I say the possibility that this change in the character may cost them some players is there. But what's really going to determine it is the gameplay. If the game is good, it's still going to sell well, whether they change this character or not. And IO Interactive's last game, if I remember correctly, is Hitman 3, and I think it sold north, by the end of this last year of 22, 24 million copies, somewhere in that vicinity. They have sold a lot of copies of Hitman 3. It's done quite well. It's probably padded their coffers, so they feel like they can do what they want in this game. Now, having said that, I don't see a lot of people clamoring for this. This is not something I would say is highly anticipated. I don't see a lot of people talking about it, looking for it. Not on the order that, obviously not on the order, say, of Resident Evil 9 or of Grand Theft Auto or even Blood of the Dawnwalker. I don't see that a lot of people are really interested in this. So it's I'm not sure that whether it's a modern Bond or not is going to make a whole lot of difference. Now, if the gameplay is good, I expect they'll recoup their development cost, though at this point there's zero indication of what the development cost is for IO Interactive. So I guess we'll just have to see. It is always amazing to me, though, these narratives that generate around these games before we ever see them. And you just don't, we won't know what happens until the game is playable. And that will be the ultimate determination. Now, I said to somebody the other day, and I think I've said on this channel before, that people who don't like the quote DEI inclusion in games, I said DEI will never kill a great game, but it can be a coffin nail for a borderline game. And as to which one, 007 First Light will be, I guess we'll find out at the end of May. And since we're talking about games with a questionable strategy on release, I want to turn to this Dual Shockers article that was published on Monday, 28th of December, and it says Silent Hill is adopting a destructive pattern that Call of Duty had to stop. In a surprise move, the Silent Hill franchise is going to be adopting a bold new release strategy. It was long since considered dead, with Konami seemingly losing interest, especially after Hideo Kojima left the company and PT Silent Hills was canceled. Konami has since done a 180, with Silent Hill 2's remake and Silent Hill F being huge hits. In a message to Famitsu, Konami's Motoi Okamoto said the aim is for Silent Hill to move to an annual release schedule. Yeah. I'll paraphrase what was said in the rest of the article because I generally agree with it. They say that while some franchises, especially like sports games, will release annually, not every genre or franchise is going to be successful doing that. And Silent Hill may not be either. The article cites the possibilities of, one, diluting fan interest by having an annual entry. That's a possibility. But more to the point, it's going to dilute the quality game over time, because it's very difficult to keep up with that kind of release schedule. The sports games get away with it because they just slap new rosters on it and tweak the mechanics. It's not that big a deal. Coming up with a whole new game, that's a little different. And they could extend this practice into the short term. I understand they remade Silent Hill 2. I understand there is a remake of Silent Hill 1 most likely in the works. So they can get away with doing a remake, interspersed between fresh entries into the IP year over year. but I don't think they're going to be able to keep this up with new entries for very long without the quality of the game degrading over time. Each game, down the line, you're going to start seeing these games get worse and worse as they're trying to stick to the schedule because they're just going to rush them. They're just going to rush them out. And that would be a shame since they just now kind of recovered interest in the franchise. They don't need to immediately, turn around and bury it again. So, that'll be interesting to see how that goes. But as the saying goes, it's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see how it works out. Okay, it is now my sad duty to report on 2 games that are terminal, it seems, one of which was being shut down, the other of which is probably going to follow suit in the near future. Start with this Eurogamer article from the 2nd of January on Thursday. Anthem's end is nearly here. Only days remain before EA will switch off the servers to BioWare's ill-fated multiplayer game. They say as of the publishing of this article, 10 days left. When I put up this video, it'll be a week from tomorrow. So on the 4th is a Sunday. The next day is the 5th Monday. It's a week from there, and they're shutting these down. We've had this end of date in the diary since EA announced it last summer, and I did cover it then. And the author of the article said that day seemed far away then. Now it does not. It's not clear whether there'll be a switching off event or of any kind, or you're just going to wake up and it's going to be gone. Because it's a multiplayer game only, an online game only, once it turns off, that's the end. Nobody will be able to play it offline, which is kind of a bummer. So Anthem's end is nearly here, and that's going to be the end. Another I hate to use the metaphor the second time in the same video, but another coffin nail for BioWare. They didn't do so well after Mass Andromeda, and I think we're going to say it was 2017, and this came out the next year, maybe 2019. It has not done well, and then Dragon Age Veilguard. So they've had 3 kind of either semi or major flops in a row. Not good for BioWare, and I think people think their next Mass Effect game is going to be it, make or break. But as it turns out, Anthem was doing a team-based multi-shooter for a studio that was known for its single-player RPGs was not the right move, and they're going to be shutting this one down. Also, I'd like to look over to this Insider Gaming article, which was published the same day. Splitgate has fumbled again and failed to secure any traction following rebrand. You remember Splitgate? Or Splitgate 2, rather? It was the game that was introduced, I think it was the Summer Game Awards last year, where they came out and said the developers said they were going to redefine what it meant to be an FPS. They redefined something, all right. Splitgate has had a rough couple of years, from the support ending on the more successful first title to the second game launching. Amid a wave of controversies, the problems for 1047 Games and their portal-toting shooter began very early on. Following a catastrophic downfall, the team relaunched Splitgate 2 under a new identity, but that too has proven a failure. What was once dubbed the games that would make FPS great again has been reduced to a title on life support. On December 17th, it's 1047 Games released Splitgate Arena Reloaded, a rebrand of Splitgate 2, which was initially released in June to a disappointing reception. It was pulled back to beta as player counts imploded. The game's creator-backed marketing campaign was criticized. Insanely expensive microtransactions surfaced, and that'll kill a lot of games. And 2 rounds of layoffs were held in just 6 weeks. So they overhauled this game. It came out. They re-released it, and I'm going to go over here and look at Steam and see how it's doing. That's what it looks like for the last month. This game had player counts in the double digits up until they released their relaunch. They got up to 2,300 players, and they slowly started to tail off. Excuse me. We're in the weekend right now. I'll be interested to see what it looks like by middle of this week coming up. But yeah, they're basically hitting 1,000 players now. You can look at the max and see what the entire timeline looks like. The part of this that really gets to me is if you come down to the Twitch stats, 233 players watch this, or in the last 24 hours. Nobody's watching on stream. By contrast, if we go over to Arc Raiders and look at its, 150,000 people watched it in the last 24 hours. In terms of kind of extraction shooter or team-based shooters, I know they're not all extraction. In terms of team-based shooters, nobody cares about Splitgate. That's why I said I think that if things don't change, this game could be following Anthem into obscurity, and it might take the studio with it. there's two types of studios in this industry: the quick and the dead. And 1047 is leaning into the second category. Okay, you know me. You know I love to end these videos with a good news story. So I'm going to use this PC Gamer article from Thursday, 2nd of January. Dispatch sold over 3 million copies in 2025, and only around 5% of players beat the game without romancing anyone. And it says, okay, interactive superhero show Dispatch was a critical success, selling 3 million copies in 2025. The remarkable thing about this is I think this game only released around, was it October 20th, 22nd, somewhere in that frame. So this game has only been out, as of the making of this video, 10 or 11 weeks. And it sold 3 million copies in that time frame. You know, again, I love to see it. I love to see the smaller studios, the indies, the double A's, just crushing it in terms of their sales and their picks. And it says, okay, according to the studio, players answered 727 million calls, dispatched over 1 billion heroes, and watched an estimated 23 million hours of gameplay on YouTube and Twitch. The funny tidbits also included how only about 164,000 players got through the game without falling for anyone. Nearly 2 million players romanced Invisigal, and another million romanced Blazer. So maybe Baldur's Gate had the right idea with how eager its cast was to win the players' hearts over. In other words, how horny the characters were. See, this isn't hard. This isn't hard, developers and studios. Give the players a good gameplay loop. You don't need to spend $100 million on graphical fidelity to be able to pick out the NPC's nose hairs at 50 feet away. Give a good gameplay loop. Give the players what they want, because players are going to go where they're wanted, and where they're wanted is where the studio gives them a game they can enjoy, and maybe a little spicy stuff on the side. All right, everyone, I'm going to leave this one here. 2026 is off and running, and so is the gaming industry and the gaming news. So I'll be back next week with more QuickBird news. In the meantime, I've got lots of stuff going on the channel. I'm still doing my playthrough of Stray. That's been painfully slow, but I'm getting back to it. I also started my next Collections 101 with the Tomb Raider 2013 game, listing how to get all the collectibles there. So feel free to check that out. It's basically a full playthrough of the game. And I've started my How Does It Play Today series. I should be coming up with the first video from, we're now 25 years back. We're now looking at games that were published in 2001. So I have the first one of those be posted. I think it'll be a crowd pleaser. And just lots of stuff going on. As always, I ask you to do the YouTube stuff. If you enjoy this content, please leave a like on the channel. Leave a comment down below if you disagreed or agreed with anything I covered. If you think I missed a major story, I'd love to know that too. I do read all comments, try to respond to as many as possible, and I would love to have your subscription. But enough of that, and I will leave this one here. Again, I'll be back next week with more QuickBird news. Thank you all for tuning in. You all go out there, live your best lives in this happy new year, and y'all stay gaming.